Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Lijar Gavei-Lazi, and coming up in today's newscast. The Egyptian-brokered ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad now in effect after 3 days of intense hostilities, which saw over 1,000 missiles targeting Israeli civilians. Meanwhile, as the IDF gradually removes all restrictions on the Gaza periphery area, ILTV hears firsthand about life under constant threat. And as hostilities come to an end in Israel, tensions heating up in the Far East. Joining us in the ILTV studio, Taiwan's senior representative in Israel. Israelis and Palestinians gradually returning to routine after a ceasefire agreement went into effect Sunday night, following 3 days of hostilities between Israel and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. All the details in the following report. Life slowly returning to normal Monday in Israel as residents of the south reel from Operation Breaking Dawn. An Egyptian-brokered ceasefire went into effect Sunday night at 11:30 p.m. after an intense 3 days of hostilities. Though, moments after the ceasefire was set to take effect at 11:38 p.m., the Palestinian Islamic Jihad fired several rockets into southern Israel, breaking the truce. This after the terror group released a barrage of missiles just before the ceasefire deadline onto the communities along the Gaza border and onto the southern city of Beersheba. Earlier in the evening, missiles were fired on Tel Aviv and at Ben Gurion Airport. Israel's Iron Dome system was activated and no casualties were reported. The IDF responded by targeting rocket stores and launching sites at the Gaza Strip, dealing one final blow to the Islamic Jihad's terror infrastructure just before the ceasefire took effect. Both sides have since upheld the truce. Overall, over 1,000 missiles were fired into Israel from Gaza, threatening the lives of the residents of the south and sending Israelis from Beersheba to Ashkelon to Tel Aviv into bomb shelters. According to IDF spokesperson's unit, Brigadier General Gran Kochav, some 200 missiles backfired into Gaza, killing more Palestinians from the failed rocket launches than from IDF fire. Nevertheless, he said that the military would probe the civilian casualties. Meanwhile, on Sunday, Prime Minister Yair Lapid said that Israel's objectives in the operation had been met. In turn, Islamic Jihad leader Ziad al-Nakhala said in a speech Sunday night out of Iran that the movement remains even more powerful following the truce.
العدو الصهيوني رفع شعارا واضحا ومحددا وهو تصفية حركة الجهاد الإسلامي وجناحها العسكري سرايا القدس. اليوم بعد توقف الاشتباكات وتوقف النار نرى المشهد واضحا. حركة الجهاد الإسلامي بقيت قوية وثابتة وأكثر قوة.
Despite these claims, Israel estimates it has dealt a heavy blow to the terror organization, targeting its leaders and terror infrastructure within the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, with the ceasefire still holding on Monday morning, the IDF announced that restrictions facing residents of the south would be gradually lifted throughout the day. The first step included reopening the roads and intersections surrounding Gaza, with residents finally no longer required to stay in the vicinity of their bomb shelters. And now joining us with more on the ceasefire agreement and Operation Breaking Dawn, Brigadier General in the Reserves Amir Avivi, CEO and founder of the Israel Defense and Security Forum. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Now, a ceasefire has gone into effect. What are the details? What have both sides agreed to?
Well, Israel only agreed to one thing, a ceasefire. The Islamic Jihad wanted to basically reach a point where it has a say on what's going on in Judea and Samaria, trying to stop the Israeli Defense Forces from apprehending terrorists of the Islamic Jihad in Judea and Samaria. Israel, of course, cannot accept that. So at the end, because the Islamic forces, they wanted to stop, they understood that they were losing every moment of this operation. They got some kind of blur promise from the Egyptians that they will ask Israel if Saadi, the guy we apprehended, is okay, and that's it. So this is at the moment the situation. There's a ceasefire.
So not a lot of gains for the Islamic Jihad. Now, how long can Israel expect quiet now? I mean, there's currently a ceasefire with Hamas, and until when is that supposed to remain in effect? And what about now with the Palestinian Islamic Jihad?
So what we are seeing is a situation where on the tactical and operational level, the Israeli Defense Forces and the State of Israel had a great success. The operation was conducted very well with excellent intelligence, targeting terrorists, basically wiping out the whole leadership of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. But I would say that on the strategic level, we have a very, very big problem, because at the end of the day, every few months or a year, we find ourselves again in an operation. And I'm afraid that if we continue with this strategy, this is what will happen. Again and again, millions of Israelis will be attacked by rockets and mortars and anti-tank missiles. And we need to really think about the long-term strategy, and we need to change it. For a long time, we wanted to keep Hamas, and Hamas has grown very influential and powerful over all of Israel, in the Negev, in the Galil, in the Judah and Samaria, and Lebanon. And there is a new reality now, which requires from us to think again about how we are handling this zone, because Gaza is not just Gaza. It's affecting the whole region, and there are solutions that even don't necessarily mean conquering back all of the Gaza Strip, that will enable us to really destroy for the long term the capabilities of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad.
And can you maybe share with us or expand on what some of these solutions would be? Because really we do see a continual sort of cycle of rocket fire and operations every few months or so. So what is needed to finally put an end to this cycle?
Well, what we need is basically an open operation, meaning acting like we're doing in Syria. In Syria, we are determined to prevent from Iran to gain force, and therefore we attack every day. Now, what's going on in Gaza is inconceivable. We see them growing their capabilities after each operation. We know exactly where the warehouses are, where the factories are, and we let them grow and grow until they reach a point where they feel strong enough, and they attack. So one way to do it is all the time targeting these capabilities, because at the end of each operation, we destroy like 90% of them. And instead of them pressuring all the time, making sure that this doesn't come back, and also toppling commanders if they do try to shoot, like we did now with the leadership of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, we stop. We see that they are able to acquire these capabilities very fast. In a few months, they are back on their feet. And this is what is going to happen with the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. It's going to be back on its feet in a few months. And then once again, we're into this cycle. So we definitely can do things otherwise. And I think that what we saw from the IDF capabilities showed us that this is possible. It's just a matter of changing strategy.
And changing strategy. Now, we know that the Islamic Jihad is largely funded by Iran. So why did Israel decide on this operation now? Does it have anything to do with Iran at all?
Well, of course. Israel didn't just decide on an operation. The Iranians commanded the Palestinian Islamic Jihad to carry out terror attacks against Israel. They sent units with anti-tank missiles to hit Israeli citizens along one of the main roads, 232, that surrounds Gaza Strip and is the main road for the towns, Israeli towns on this area. Basically, they were trying to hit Israelis. They tried to do it for 3 days, and we stopped all the movement in this main road. And at the end of the day, we had to act.
Let's hope that this operation will bring us quiet for some time. Amir Avivi, thank you for speaking with us today.
Thank you very much.
Will your children grow up Jewish? It all depends on their education. For more information about an Israeli scholarship, scan the QR code here.